This is Let's Make Waves podcast. I'm your host, Rana Al-Basri Marwad, and I believe that we're all here to make waves. I created this podcast to help you build your brand by sharing with you tools, resources, and strategies to gain professional authority for better business opportunities. If you want to get unstuck, you've come to the right place. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome once again to another week and another episode of Let's Make Waves podcast. As always, I'm so happy to have you here. Today, I'm going to put the spotlight on one type of social media marketing, which is influencer marketing. Now, I know it's a buzzword, influencer marketing, but you see, in this digital space, we cannot, as small business owners, we cannot afford to shy away from utilizing different marketing tools that can help us build our brand and credibility while reaching more new audience and potential prospects. So, influencer marketing uses endorsement, product mentions, partnerships with certain individuals who have a dedicated social media following. And they are viewed as social influencers or even experts in their own niche. So we cannot deny the impact that influencer marketing can have on our businesses, especially if it's done well. Simply because these influencers, the ones who are selected carefully, of course, they've built trust, they've built connection with their followers, where their recommendations can serve as a form of social proof for your business in front of potential target audience. So today, I understand how we feel about this type of marketing. It has clearly become one of the most efficient and effective ways for businesses to reach potential target audience, all while increasing brand awareness and helping sales grow at a less costly price from traditional or classic advertising. And before we dive any deeper into details about this topic, I want to acknowledge a very common concern that so many small business owners have about influencer marketing, and that is, restraining them from fully utilizing this tool in their overall marketing plans. Some of those concerns include price of the influencer fraud in some cases, and influencer controversies. So I hope that by sharing with you today the top 10 tips of how to work with influencers as small business owners, some of those concerns are going to be addressed. Okay, let's dive in. If you're a small business owner and you haven't utilized influencer marketing yet, or you feel like you're too small to have an influencer marketing plan, I want you to consider these 10 tips, and I hope that they guide you to feel much more confident when you're working with influencers. The first tip is to decide on the goals, whether they are a specific campaign or an overall brand deal. By deciding on the goals, you can then have a process, let's say, to make it easy for you to start finding, researching, and selecting the right partner influencers who are the right partners for that campaign. If it's a specific campaign, let's say you're going into a sales season, the kind of influencers that you would choose would be different from if you have a brand deal, like a 1 year, maybe even 6-month deal, where this influencer that you're working with will be helping you to build authenticity and credibility in your brand. So make sure that you are very clear on your goals. And once you do that, it becomes much more easier for you in your research to start identifying not only the right influencers, but the influencers who have the type of credibility with their followers that you're looking for, as well as influencers who have any kind of history in certain controversies. It becomes really clear for you who to partner with, and to align your values with the values of the influencer that you've selected. Tip number 2 is to avoid influencer fraud. So focus on different types of engagement versus follower count. And influencer fraud has been a topic that is out there for many, many years since the start of social media. And because social media, when it first started, the intention of the platform was not 100% clear, and its efficacy towards the followings. So a lot of influencers and a lot of brands at the same time focused a lot on the number of followers versus engagement. Now, we've learned not to do that. However, because of that kind of understanding, certain frauds took place. So you have influencers who have been buying followers or fake engagements or engagement pods or all of that. So there are certain things that you need to look out for during the research phase so that it can help you identify the right influencer with the right real following and engagement and all of that good stuff for you to know that you're going to be working with a person who has the same aligned values as you are. So the different types of engagement, it means, overall engagement and contextual engagement. So overall engagement, that's very clear, the engagement of the followers with the different content that the influencer is posting or sharing out there. And that's easily calculated. And there's so many software that also can help you with that matter. And contextual engagement is engagement when it comes to followers engaging with the influencer content by giving authentic comments, authentic shares, authentic feedback when it comes to their content. You can easily know that by going through certain content pieces on the influencer's profile and really start digging deep and studying the kind of engagement, the contextual engagement that would make sense, and it will give you an indication of the quality as well as the realistic engagement between the followers and that influencer. So fraud can be easily spotted by analyzing engagement ratio, growth rate, irrelevant engagement, and of course, the type and the quality of the content of that influencer. Tip number 3. Discuss creative concept with the influencer and give them creative freedom. They know their followers more than you. And this is something that I know that some brands battle with because they feel like they lose control when they leave the influencer with a lot of creative freedom. And this is where a sweet spot needs to be found. Sharing with the influencer the kind of creative concept of the campaign is really important because it kind of educates that influencer on what your brand is all about, what is your product or service, who really are the specific target audience that you have, that you want to target, and how does that kind of mirror into their following. It just gives the influencer not only information but context of why you as a brand or as a business decided to work with them on that particular campaign. So by giving them that information, it becomes a relationship between you and the influencer to sit down and have brainstorming session by giving the influencer creative freedom to come up with creative ideas to kind of share the messaging that you are very keen on sharing through that influencer in the campaign. And by doing that kind of communication and that kind of relationship building, you actually make sure that the messaging that's being shared through the different influencers that you're working with, they don't look like a copy. They are different and they are true to the influencer and true to the creative side of that influencer without jeopardizing or affecting the overall message that you want out of it. So it's definitely a win-win situation. So this is a tip that I hope more and more businesses and even brands consider when they want to start a campaign with an influencer. Tip number 4, agree on specific KPIs. Now, I know this is like very obvious, but not all businesses have very clear and specific KPIs when they're doing influencer marketing campaigns. There are a lot of KPIs that are sometimes unrealistic because not all influencers or influencer campaigns can be directly related to sales. But it is very important to have certain KPIs, not only in the deal that you have with the influencer, but also in the expectations, to be honest about your expectations out of that campaign with the influencer. So just make sure that you are also set up with the software, or you have a team to monitor the results as per the agreed KPIs, and that you have very actionable goals that make sense for you and for the influencer that you're partnering with. Okay, tip number 5. Build connections with influencers by sponsoring contests or giveaways. And I wanted to put that in because today we cannot deal with influencer marketing like, a sort of a hit and run. We try it, we do it, and then we just bounce. It doesn't work like that. It's so much similar to public relations and media relations, in the sense that these influencers become like the megaphone that you're using to talk about a certain campaign, or to talk about your brand and its efficacy and its product listing or types or whatever it is. So we have to also look at them as um, journalists in the sense, so by building that relationship and understanding what they do outside of our deal, gives us opportunities to showcase to them that we are not just a brand that speaks to them when we need something out of it. So it becomes very, businessy in the sense, but we are also a brand who believe in their creative process and in them as creative content creators. So we use that as an opportunity to also build brand by sponsoring contests that they do, giveaways that they do. This also gives credibility to the relationship. So it shows in front of the followers, who are very, very smart, that this relationship between this influencer and your business is not just based on an agreement or a deal. It is also based on the influencer being very keen on working with you and your business outside certain campaigns. Okay, so tip number 6 is to sign contracts and to be very clear on intellectual property or IP. And this is where the gray areas come into play when we don't have very clear contracts between us and between the influencers, regardless of the size of the influencer. It becomes very muddy in terms of expectations and in terms of also publishing dates and all of the good stuff. So it's very, very important to be very clear in terms of the relationship between you as a business owner and the influencer, and to create very clear contracts between you two, because this is a kind of a partnership, even if it's a very timely partnership. At the same time, the contracts will be a kind of a way to register any kind of intellectual property and who is the owner of that end result, which is the creative content. So if you have a campaign and the influencer is helping you with the campaign, and you know that this is a timely matter, and that the content that will be created for that campaign is just for timely reasons, you might, feel that the intellectual property of that particular campaign can stay with the influencer. You as a brand have the right to reshare it during the campaign dates. However, if you're working with an influencer when it comes to a brand deal over a longer period of time, you might feel that it is necessary for you to have ownership of the intellectual property, ownership of that kind of content, for you to repurpose it and reuse it on the platform or on other platforms such as your website or in, any other place. The clarity on the intellectual property will also impact the cost of this partnership, of course, especially if you want intellectual property of that particular content to use it for advertising reasons. So having very clear contracts and a very clear KPIs, as well as very clear ownership of the intellectual property, it becomes a much smoother relationship and a much smoother process during the course of the campaign. Tip number 7 is to consider shifting from influencer deal to brand ambassadorship. And I say that it doesn't work for everybody, but I say that because that's a very natural and positive way, and also sometimes cost efficient when it comes to small business owners. Because as we all know, our budgets are not as big as big brands. So when we have influencers, especially if they are, micro or nano influencers, and we work with them consistently, and we have seen results in this relationship, and they have showcased a very authentic partnership with us, moving them from just a timely influencer deal to brand ambassadorship in certain cases could be the right way of moving forward and growing together and growing that relationship. So don't take ambassadorship off the table. It is something to consider, especially when there has been consistent positive result with a particular influencer in on several campaigns or on several deals. This is a very good option, and it's a very cost efficient option, especially for small business owners. Tip number 8 is to partner with complementary brands to work with a particular influencer as a 360-degree experience. And this is an option especially for small business owners who want to work with large influencers. So as we all know, influencers, depending on their follower size as well as their engagement rate, their reach, and so many details that we need to consider. Based on those details, there are certain rates and categories of rates for different influencers. So when, as a brand, as a small business, if you want to work with a larger, a bit more expensive influencer, sometimes partnerships work. So when you and another brand, a complementary brand, work together and book the influencer on an overall campaign that makes sense for you and for the partner brand, then the costs are being divided. And that's a great way to consider when you're doing campaigns, especially if they are timely, because then it makes sense for you to also work with big influencers and influencers who are more expensive or not within 100% within your budget. So, like for example, if you have a spa, let's say your business is a brick and mortar and you have a spa, and this spa is located inside a mall, then by partnering with the mall management, by partnering with them and agreeing on working with a particular influencer, then the experience would be for the influencer to cover both going to the mall and as well having a day of pampering at the spa. It's a win-win situation for the mall as well as for you as a business owner of the spa, and it makes sense for the influencer, especially if it's within their content type and content ideas, and this is what they usually give within their content strategy to their followers. It makes sense for the influencer as well. So that's kind of a win-win situation. Of course, the deliverables of such deals then would become something that you and your brand partner need to consider, so that the cost will not be too high and it will be easily distributed amongst you two. So this is a great way to work with expensive influencers, really big influencers, as a small business owner. Tip number 9 is to build relationships and to give the influencer something that you have access to. Just like I've mentioned before, looking at influencers, just like the way we look at media when we're doing our public relations, is really important, especially if the influencer is a valuable influencer that you've worked with several times. So understanding the interests of that influencer and understanding what other kinds of content do they create within their strategy. And if you as a business owner have access to certain services or certain products that would be interesting for that influencer, then hooking them up with that thing could be a great way to also build relationship and build trust between you and between you and that influencer. So always look at this relationship and on the long term. It's not a short term relationship. By looking at it that way, you kind of start identifying certain things that could be interest to that influencer. And if you have access to it, you can basically, support them with it by either an introduction or by helping them find the right person to get something from another company that could be you have access to. That builds trust, and that builds authentic relations with these influencers, who will never forget you as a business owner, as well as your brand, and who would consider that consider have that to consider the next time they work with you. So on the long term, that could affect maybe not the pricing of the influencer, but of the coverage of that influencer and the implementation of the campaign. When the influencer loves a brand, even if they have agreed to a certain KPI, they might go over and above their agreement, because they believe in you and in your business and in your brand. So there's always something positive that comes out of such kind of relationships. Okay, so the final tip is to incorporate influencer marketing when you're ready to be consistent at it. And I'm saying this because, as I've mentioned before, it's not a hit and run kind of strategy. Actually, that is very damaging to your image and very damaging to your reputation, because influencers talk amongst each other. So it's really important that when you sit down and you start putting your plans, and you are trying to incorporate influencer marketing into your overall plans, then to take that decision once you know that you're going to consistently use influencer marketing in your strategy. So you could take that decision based on knowing that you have a lot of activations coming up, different campaigns or different events that you can utilize this particular tool with. So there you have it. These are the 10 tips that I wanted to share with you. These tips will give you an overall strategy and perspective of how to look at influencer marketing, and also control the overwhelm, and believe that it's not only budget oriented, so you don't think, oh, I don't have the budget, so I cannot do that. But it's also gives you the perspective of, okay, with my budgets, with my limited budget, how can I utilize this tool that I know will give a very, very big impact on my sales, or my credibility building, my reputation building, and of course on my brand building as a small business owner. The important thing to remember is that there are all types of influencers are out there. Being a small business owner or having limitations, as I said, in the budget, are not factors that can prevent you from utilizing influencer marketing in your plans. The important thing to remember is to do the homework, study the platforms really well, and make sure that you really have a solid research about the influencers that you want to work with before putting together a plan and brainstorming ideas for collaboration. And with that, we've come to the end of today's episode. Thank you, as always, for listening. Please feel free to connect with me if you have any topic or suggestion to discuss. You know how to connect with me either via email or on my website. All my social accounts are mentioned in the show notes. As always, I hope that you didn't forget to subscribe to my podcast. I would be honored if you could give me a review. And if you think that my podcast would be interesting to somebody, please feel free to share it with them. I can't wait to touch base with you this time next week. So till then, have a great week and take care.